At my parents' anniversary party, my sister whipped my daughter with a belt because she wouldn't wait on her son like a servant. He's the king. You scrub his toilet. My daughter's arm broke. We walked out. What happened next left them shaken to their core, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you where I am now. I'm standing at a window, watching a park I used to avoid. The coffee in my hand actually tastes like something good, for once. And outside, my daughter, Mila, is laughing with friends who don't demand she serve them. Her arm healed months ago. The cast came off in February. That scar, barely visible now, sits just below her elbow. A tiny punctuation mark in a sentence we're still learning to read, but one that has irrevocably changed our story. I'm calm now, steady. It's the kind of steady that comes after you've walked through fire, not burned, but forged. 6 months ago, though, I was standing in a different room entirely. I was wearing a dress I hated, forcing smiles for photos I didn't want, pretending my family was something it had never been. It was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, 50 years, 50 guests, white tablecloths that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. The centerpieces were arranged like altars, and the cake looked like it belonged in a museum, not on a table for actual eating. My mother called it a celebration of family unity. My sister, Verena, called it her stage. And my daughter, Mila, she called it the night everything changed. The venue was one of those places that tries too hard. Chandeliers fit for a castle, not a banquet hall. Waitstaff in gloves, little gold chairs that wobbled if you sat just wrong. My parents had rented it for the entire evening, meaning there was no escape, no early exit that wouldn't be noticed, cataloged, and discussed in the family group chat for weeks. I arrived with Mila just after 6. She was 12 then, quiet in the way thoughtful children are, not shy, not timid, just observant. She wore a blue dress she'd picked out herself, her hair carefully braided, her expression already guarded. She'd learned early that our family gatherings weren't safe spaces. Stay close to me, I told her as we walked in, and she nodded, not even needing to ask why. She already knew. Verena was there before us, of course. She always arrived early, not to help, but to claim territory. She stood near the head table in a dress that likely cost what I made in a month, her hair salon perfect, her smile wide, practiced, and utterly empty. Her son, Ronan, stood beside her, 11 years old and already wearing entitlement like a second skin. He had his mother's sharp eyes and his father's name, but neither of their consciences. There you are, Verena said when she saw us, her voice bright and false. I was starting to think you weren't coming. We're right on time, I said, my voice level. Of course you are. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Mila, sweetheart, you look adorable, doesn't she, Ronan? Ronan glanced at Mila like she was a piece of furniture, barely registering her presence. Verena laughed, the sound sharp and performative. He's so honest. I love that about him. I didn't respond. I just guided Mila toward our assigned seats, which were, naturally, at the far end of the family table, close enough to be included, far enough to know our place. That's how Verena arranged things, proximity as hierarchy, distance as punishment. Dinner started as these things always do, champagne toasts, speeches that dragged on, laughter that felt rehearsed. My father stood and spoke about commitment. My mother dabbed at tears that may or may not have been real. Relatives I barely knew raised glasses and droned on about inspiration and legacy. I sipped water and watched the clock. Mila sat beside me, picking at her food, her shoulders tight. You okay? I whispered. She nodded, but her eyes told a different story. Across the table, Ronan was already acting like a tyrant in training. He demanded 3 different drinks from the waiter, complained his steak wasn't cooked right, and then knocked over a glass of water without a hint of an apology. Verena watched him with something sickeningly close to pride. Then it happened. Ronan snapped his fingers at Mila, not subtly, not quietly. He snapped his fingers like she was a servant, pointed at his empty juice glass and said, "Get me more." Mila froze. I felt my jaw tighten, a slow burn starting in my chest. But before I could say anything, Verena leaned forward, her smile widening. "Go ahead, Mila," she said, oh so sweetly. "Help your cousin out." The table went quiet, not silent, but that particular, tense quiet where everyone hears everything but pretends they don't. Mila looked at me, her eyes pleading. What do? I wanted to tell her to stay seated. I wanted to tell Ronan to get his own damn juice. house. I wanted to stand up and leave and never come back. But this was my parents' anniversary. This was family. This was the performance we were all supposed to maintain. So I hesitated. And in that hesitation, Ronan snapped his fingers again. Napkin, he said, and a fork, the clean kind. Verena laughed, light and casual, as if this was utterly charming. He knows what he wants, she chirped. I've taught him to have standards. Under the table, Mila's hands curled into fists. Mila, Verena said again, her voice still sweet, but now with a razor-thin edge. Don't be rude. I felt my daughter's body go rigid beside me. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, Mila said. No. The word landed like a stone in still water. Ronan blinked. Verena's smile faltered, her perfectly composed face cracking. What did you say? Verena asked, her tone shifting, hardening. Mila lifted her chin, just slightly. I said, no. If you've ever been in a room where the air changes, where the tension becomes something you can taste, you know what happened next. Verena stood slowly, deliberately. Her chair scraped against the floor, a harsh sound in the sudden quiet. Conversations around us stopped. Heads turned. Excuse me, Verena said, her voice calm, but cold as ice. Mila didn't back down. He can get his own juice. Verena's face went still in that way faces do just before something terrible happens. You, she said softly, menacingly, don't get to talk to my son like that. I didn't talk to him like anything, Mila countered. I just said no. That's when Verena reached for her belt. I need you to understand something. This wasn't a moment of blind rage. This wasn't a loss of control. Verena removed her belt slowly, methodically, like this was routine procedure. Like she had every right. Like discipline was her domain, and my daughter was her subject. No one stopped her. Not my parents. Not my brother-in-law. Not the 50 guests who sat frozen in their gold chairs, watching. I moved too late. I was halfway out of my seat when the belt came down. The first strike hit Mila's shoulder. The second caught her arm as she tried to shield herself. The third is the one I hear in my sleep. It made a sound I'd never heard before. Not the crack of leather against skin, but something deeper, sharper, final, bone-breaking. Mila screamed. Not a cry, not a whimper. A primal, gut-wrenching shriek that cut through the chandeliers, the champagne toasts, and the carefully arranged flowers. Her arm hung wrong, unnatural, limp. I was on my feet, but the world had gone slow and fast at the same time. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." My mother put a hand to her mouth. My father stood, but didn't move. And Verena stood there, belt still in hand, breathing hard, her face flushed, but not with shame, with indignation. She needed to learn. Verena said, her voice shaking with self-righteous fury. Children need to learn their place. I didn't respond. I didn't yell. I picked my daughter up, careful, so careful, her broken arm cradled against my chest. And I walked out. Behind me, I heard my mother say, "Wait." I didn't. I walked through the banquet hall, past the white tablecloths, the gold chairs, the cake that looked like a museum piece. I walked past 50 people who had watched my child get beaten and done nothing. I walked out into the parking lot, into air that felt too thin to breathe. I put Mila in the car as gently as I could while she sobbed and shook. And as I started the engine, I made a promise. This would not be buried. This would not be forgotten. This would not be forgiven. The emergency room was bright and cold and full of people who didn't know us, which felt like a mercy. The nurse who took Mila's vitals had kind eyes. She didn't ask too many questions at first, just focused on making my daughter comfortable, on assessing the injury, on getting her to X-ray. I sat in a plastic chair that smelled like disinfectant and waited. My phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. I didn't look at it. 20 minutes later, the doctor came out, her expression carefully neutral. "It's a clean fracture," she said. "Upper radius. We'll need to set it and cast it, but she should heal well." "How long?" I asked, my throat tight. 6 to 8 weeks, maybe less, depending on how she responds. I nodded. "Can I ask what happened?" The doctor said gently, her eyes meeting mine. My sister hit her with a belt. The doctor's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. "I see. We'll need to file a report." "I know," I said. "Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight?" "Yes." "Good. We'll take care of her. You did the right thing bringing her in." I wanted to say I should have stopped it before it happened. I wanted to say I failed her, but I just nodded and went back to waiting. It was past midnight when we finally left the hospital. Mila's arm was in a cast, her eyes heavy with painkillers, her small body exhausted. I carried her to the car, buckled her in, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. My phone had been buzzing all night. I finally looked. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages. I scrolled through them slowly, my hand steady, despite the cold rage building in my chest. My mother, please come back. We need to talk about this. My father, your sister is upset. Let's not blow this out of proportion. My brother-in-law, Verena didn't mean for it to go that far. Verena, she embarrassed my son in front of everyone. What was I supposed to do? I stared at that last message for a long time. What was I supposed to do? As if hitting a 12-year-old with a belt until her arm broke was a reasonable response to a child saying no. As if my daughter's pain was secondary to Ronan's ego. As if I would ever let this go. I didn't respond to any of them. I started the car and drove home. And when Mila was finally asleep in her bed, her casted arm resting on a pillow, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I started documenting. If you've ever had to build a case against someone you love, you know how strange it feels, how clinical, how cold, how utterly necessary. I opened a blank document and began typing. Date, time, location, witnesses. I wrote down everything I could remember about the anniversary dinner. Who was there, where they were seated, what was said before Verena stood up. I described the belt, the strikes, the sound of Mila's arm breaking. I listed the people who watched and did nothing. Then I opened my phone and started taking screenshots. Every text message, every voicemail, every pathetic attempt at damage control. I saved them in a folder labeled evidence. Then I made a list of names, people who'd been at the party, people who might be willing to tell the truth if asked the right questions. I didn't know yet what I was going to do with all of this, but I knew I needed it because I'd learned something a long time ago. People like Verena don't stop unless they're forced to. And this time, I wasn't going to give her the chance to rewrite history. By the way, if you're still with me, still hooked on this wild ride, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. More stories like this are coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. BY morning. The story had already changed. I woke up to a group chat I'd been added to without my consent, extended family, mostly people I saw once a year at gatherings like this. The messages were already rolling in. So sorry to hear about the accident. Hope Mila feels better soon. These things happen at big events. Accident. I stared at the word until it stopped looking like language. Then I scrolled up and found the message that had started it all. Verena. Last night got out of hand. Mila had a little accident during a disagreement. She's fine. Just wanted everyone to know before rumors start. A little accident. A disagreement. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger exactly. Colder than that. Sharper. This was coordination. This was strategy. This was Verena doing what she'd always done. Controlling the narrative before anyone else could speak. I didn't respond in the group chat. Instead, I called the one person I thought might tell me the truth, my cousin Margot, who'd been sitting 3 seats down from us at the anniversary dinner. She answered on the second ring. Hey, she said carefully. How's Mila? Broken arm, I said. Clean fracture. 6 to 8 weeks in a cast. Silence. Margot, I said quietly. What did you see? She hesitated. I saw Verena lose her temper. That's not what I asked. Another pause, then softer. I saw her hit Mila with a belt. 3 times, maybe more. I saw Mila's arm. I heard it break. Did anyone else see it? Everyone saw it, Margot said, her voice shaking now. We didn't know what to do. Your parents were right there, and they didn't stop it, so we thought. You thought if they didn't care, you didn't have to either. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't respond to that. Margot, I said, if someone asks you what happened, will you tell the truth? Who's asking? Does it matter? A long silence. Yes, she finally said. I'll tell the truth. Thank you. I hung up and made 3 more calls. 2 people confirmed what Margot had said. One person, my uncle, told me I was making this bigger than it needed to be, and hung up on me. I added his name to a different list. 3 days later, there was a knock on the door. Not my door, my parents' door. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard about it later. How my mother answered in her bathrobe. How my father stood behind her looking confused. How the woman at the door introduced herself as a Child Protective Services caseworker and asked if they had a few minutes to talk. Then another knock. This one at Verena's house. A police officer. A social worker. Questions about the anniversary party. Questions about the belt. Questions about Mila's broken arm. And then, a few hours later, a 3rd knock. This one was mine. I opened the door to find a lawyer I'd hired 2 days earlier, holding a manila folder that contained everything I'd documented. Hospital records, witness statements, text messages, photos of Mila's cast. It's filed, she said simply. Restraining order, civil suit, criminal complaint. All of it. I nodded. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked gently. Once this is in motion, it's going to get ugly. I thought about Mila's scream. I thought about the sound of her arm breaking. I thought about Verina's cold voice. Children need to learn their place. I'm sure, I said. She nodded and handed me the folder. Then let's make sure they learn theirs. The call started within an hour. My mother, hysterical. What have you done? The police were here. Social services. Do you know what this looks like? My father, cold. You're tearing this family apart. My brother-in-law, desperate. Verina's falling apart. She didn't mean to hurt Mila. Can't we work this out privately? Verina herself sent one message. You're going to regret this. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I sat with Mila on the couch, her casted arm resting between us, and I said, do you know what's happening? She nodded. You're making sure she doesn't hurt anyone else. That's right. Are you scared? She asked. I thought about that. No, I said. Not anymore. Good. Mila said quietly. Me neither. We sat there for a long time, watching the sunset through the window, listening to my phone buzz and buzz and buzz. I didn't pick it up. The family started unraveling faster than I expected. Verina's confidence, which had always seemed unshakable, collapsed the moment she realized silence wouldn't protect her this time. She hired a lawyer, expensive, defensive, aggressive, but even he couldn't explain away a broken bone. Her husband, who'd stood by silently during the anniversary dinner, suddenly had a lot to say. He told investigators he'd had concerns about Verina's temper for years. He told them he'd tried to intervene, but she wouldn't listen. He was saving himself. I didn't blame him. I just noted it. My parents scrambled to contain the damage. They called relatives, hosted dinners, tried to rally support for Verina, framed the whole thing as a misunderstanding, blown out of proportion by an overprotective parent. But the problem with trying to rewrite history is that some things leave permanent marks. Hospital records don't lie. X-rays don't have alternate interpretations. And witnesses, when pressed, when questioned, when subpoenaed, tell the truth more often than you'd think. 2 of Verina's friends stopped returning her calls. Ronan's school started asking uncomfortable questions about his home environment. Her social media, once full of carefully curated family photos, went dark. She was unraveling, and everyone could see it. But what terrified her, what terrified all of them, wasn't just the legal consequences. It was the certainty, because they'd spent years believing I would stay quiet, that I would forgive, that I would prioritize family peace over my daughter's safety. And now they were learning how wrong they'd been. The hearing was set for early March. I didn't sleep much the week before, not because I was afraid, but because I kept running through everything in my mind. What I'd say, how I'd say it, what they might ask. My lawyer told me to stay calm, stick to the facts, let the evidence speak. You don't have to convince them you're right, she said. You just have to show them what happened. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. Simple, professional, nothing flashy. Mila stayed with a friend. I didn't want her to have to see this. Verina arrived with her lawyer, her face carefully composed, but her eyes were red-rimmed. My parents sat behind her, stone-faced. I sat on the opposite side of the courtroom, alone. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for theatrics. She listened to the timeline, reviewed the medical records, heard testimony from 3 witnesses who'd been at the anniversary dinner. Margot was one of them. She cried while she described what she'd seen, but she didn't waver. Verina's lawyer tried to argue provocation, that Mila had been disrespectful, that Verina had reacted as a concerned authority figure, that the injury was unintentional. The judge cut him off. Are you arguing, she said slowly, her voice like steel, that a 12-year-old child saying no justifies being struck with a belt hard enough to fracture her arm? The lawyer hesitated. Your Honor, discipline is a parental prerogative. She's not the parent. The judge said flatly. Silence. The judge looked at Verina. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Verina stood, her hands shaking. I didn't mean to hurt her. I was just trying to teach her respect by breaking her arm. It was an accident. An accident. The judge repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. With a belt that you deliberately removed and used multiple times. Verina's face crumpled. She embarrassed my son. Stop talking. The the judge said, her voice a whip crack. Verena sat. The judge turned to me. How is your daughter? She's healing, I said, physically and otherwise. I swallowed, my throat tight. She's scared of family gatherings. She doesn't trust easily, but she's strong. The judge nodded. I'm issuing a restraining order. No contact with the minor or her parent. Supervised visitation with her own child pending further evaluation. And I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal review. Verena gasped. My parents stood, but the judge held up a hand. Sit down, she commanded. I'm not finished. They sat, chastened. I've been doing this job for 23 years, the judge said, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom, and I have never understood families who protect the abuser instead of the victim. You should be ashamed. She closed the file. We're adjourned. I walked out of the courtroom into March sunlight that felt too bright, too clean. My phone buzzed. My mother. You've destroyed this family. I deleted the message without responding. My lawyer caught up with me outside. You okay? Yeah, I said. I think I am. She smiled. Good, because this isn't over. I know. Are you ready for that? I thought about Mila's cast, about her scream, about Verena's voice saying, children need to learn their place. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The criminal trial took 6 months. I won't recount every detail, the testimonies, the cross-examinations, the procedural delays. It was exhausting, brutal, and utterly necessary. Verena was convicted of assault, sentenced to probation, mandatory anger management, and community service. Not prison, not the consequence I might have wanted, but permanent, public, undeniable. Her name is in court records now. Her crime is documented, and every time someone searches her name, they'll find it. That, I've learned, is its own kind of justice. Ending. It's been 9 months since the anniversary dinner. Mila's arm healed completely. The scar is barely visible now. She's back to drawing, to writing, to being 12 in all the ways she should have been allowed to be all along. She asks sometimes if we'll ever see Verena again. I tell her the truth. Not unless you want to. She thinks about that. Then she says, I don't think I do. Okay, I say. Are you sad? She asks about the family. I consider the question. No. I say finally. I'm not sad about losing people who valued appearances more than your safety. She nods. Good. We're building something different now. Smaller, quieter, but infinitely safer. We see Margot sometimes. She apologized and I accepted it. We're rebuilding trust slowly. My parents tried to reconcile once, awkwardly, over coffee. I didn't finish. They said they understood why I'd done what I'd done, but they still thought I'd gone too far. I told them that breaking a child's arm was too far. They didn't have an answer for that. We haven't spoken since. I stand at the window now, watching Mila laugh with her friends in the park, and I think about what they were afraid of. Not consequences, really not punishment. Certainty. Because for years, they'd operated on the assumption that I would stay quiet, that family came first, that forgiveness was mandatory. They were wrong. And when they realized I wasn't going to protect them from the truth, that I was going to document it, present it, insist on it, they fell apart. Because here's what I learned. You can abuse a child once, but you live with the consequences forever. Not because I'm vengeful, not because I'm cruel, but because some things, some truths, don't go away just because they're inconvenient. Mila's arm healed. The family didn't. And I'm okay with that, because the family I'm building now, the one where my daughter feels safe, where no is respected, where love doesn't come with conditions, is worth every single thing I lost. I finish my coffee. Outside, Mila waves at me. I wave back. And for the first time in a long time, I feel something close to peace. Not because the story is over, but because I know how it ends. With us standing, with them learning, with proof that silence isn't strength, it's surrender. And I'm done surrendering. This was my story. But I know I'm not alone in fighting for my child. If you've made it this far, I really want to know, have you ever had to choose between family peace and standing up for what's right, truly right? What did you do? Tell me in the comments below. I'm reading every single one.
The judge issued a restraining order. Verena was convicted of assault.
My arm is all better now.
I've found peace.